Hey, what's up everyone? So in this episode, I will show you how you can execute or run a JavaScript program using a browser, okay? So in order to execute a JavaScript program, we need to have what we call a JavaScript engine, and each browser usually have its own JavaScript engine. E.g. in Chrome, we have what we call V8 engine, and in Firefox, we have what we call Spider Monkey. And in the first video or the introductory video of this course, I told you we have something that we call Node.js, which allows us to learn JavaScript outside the browser. Okay, so we can run JavaScript also on a server with the help of Node.js. Also, Node.js have a JavaScript engine because it's built on top of V8 JavaScript engine. Okay, so we must have a JavaScript engine, and later in the course we will be seeing how the JavaScript engine executes a JavaScript code or a JavaScript program. Okay, and the programs in JavaScript are called scripts. So when you hear someone say I wrote a script, just know that they wrote some form of a program. It can be a JavaScript script, or maybe it's a Python script, but note that programs in JavaScript, we call them scripts. Okay, and then I need you to know that JavaScript is not Java. Okay, so some people confuses between JavaScript and Java, but those are two totally different programming languages. So JavaScript is not Java. Now for us to write some JavaScript code, we'll be needing some form of code editor, and my preferred code editor is Visual Studio Code, and I highly recommend the same if you want to have the same experience as me and if you want to really follow along. Okay, and then I need you to download Chrome because this is my preferred browser, and I highly recommend that you also use the same. So go to code.visualstudio.com and download Visual Studio Code for your machine. So you can download for macOS, for Windows, or for Linux. And then you can go to google.com/Chrome and you can download the Chrome browser because that is my preferred browser, and I also recommend that you use the same. So once you download these two applications, we will continue from there. So a quick update about the course, and I want to tell you how frequently I'll be uploading the episodes in this course, especially for those who are following along, because one of you told me to be uploading frequently and fast, but I want everyone to know how frequently will I be uploading. So I'll be uploading on Tuesdays and Fridays, and I'll be doing it at 3 p.m. EST, East African time. Okay, and the reason why I may not manage to upload daily is because I have other things to do. For example, I'm doing some freelancing projects on the side so that I can be able to pay my bills because my channel is still small and I can't fully depend on it. And then another thing is because video production is a process, so I need time to prepare, to record, to edit, and also to upload, and that is the reason. So I'll be uploading on Tuesdays and Fridays 3 p.m. EST because I'm currently in Kenya, which is in East Africa. Okay, so yeah, that is it. If you're new to the channel, please remember to subscribe and enjoy. So right now I am assuming that you have already downloaded Visual Studio Code and also you have downloaded Chrome. And now what I will do, I'll just create a new folder on my desktop and I'll call this folder JavaScript. I hit enter and then I open this folder. So if you have Visual Studio Code, you can do this to open this folder on your Visual Studio Code. So you can highlight right here, you type cmd, and this will open that directory or path on this command prompt or terminal. Okay, and from here we can use this code and a full stop or a period, and when you hit enter, now this folder, this JavaScript folder, will be opened on Visual Studio Code. Okay, so that is one of the ways in which you can open a folder in Visual Studio Code. Okay, so let me minimize that and wait for this one to load. Now here we are. Let me expand this. Now in our folder here, I want us to add a HTML file because for us to execute a JavaScript program in a browser, then we need to have a HTML page or a web page. So right here, I'll just add index.html file. I'll say index.html and I'll hit enter. And here we have a HTML page. I will generate some form of HTML sample. So I'll use Control and space, and then I'll click on HTML sample. And here we have some basic HTML tags. And I am assuming that you have basic knowledge in HTML while taking this course. So right here, I'll just say JavaScript on the title. And then I'll also add some content at our body so that we can have something. So I'll use a h2, and right here I'll also say JavaScript. Okay, now this is how we link a CSS file, but in this video we are not using CSS, so I'll just remove that. And this is how we link JavaScript to an external file. So we use script tag and then the src attribute and then another script tag. So we can include JavaScript in a HTML file in two main ways. We can use an external file, or we can write JavaScript inside the HTML file using the script tags. But for now, let's first see how we can write JavaScript using the script tags inside the HTML file. So I'll comment out this one so that it doesn't throw any errors. Okay, so we can include script tags at the head section. So right here I can say script and I cross it. Okay, there we go. So we can write some script tags just before crossing our head section. And right here, what I'll do, I'll simply say console.log and I'll say hey there. There we go. And I'll save that file. Okay, now we need to figure out a way of running this particular file. And what we can do in Visual Studio Code, we can install an extension called live server. Okay, so from the extensions here, you can search right here for live server. For me, I have it already installed. I have live server right here. So install live server, and once you install live server, what you can do, you can come to the files, you can right click, and then you can open the file with live server. So I'll open the live server. Now you can see our file have opened right here, and we have JavaScript right there. Now we can see our output for this particular JavaScript code. Okay, so we said console.log, we used these brackets and entered a message right here, and we should see it somewhere on the output. So what we need to do, you can either right click like this and then inspect, and then once you inspect right here, we will have a tab opening and we can go to the console. Okay, so this is where we can see our JavaScript output. So right here you can see hey there. So this is our output. Okay, another way of opening this console is by using F12. So you can click on F12 and that will open the console. So right now you can see we are executing our JavaScript code right here. Okay, console.log hey there. And now this is called a JavaScript statement, and it's usually terminated by a semicolon. Okay, so sometimes you'll see code that doesn't have semicolon, but it's advisable that you terminate your JavaScript statements using semicolon, and this will help us to differentiate between different JavaScript statements. So for example, we can add another statement, console.log, and we can say I am fine. I save that, and now we have two JavaScript statements, hey there and I am fine, and we should see the output on the console. So hey there and then I am fine. So that is really cool. So we write script tags at the head section, and it's recommended that we write script tags at the body right here. Okay, and the reason why it's recommended to write the script tag just before crossing the body is so that our HTML content can first load, and then we can be able to add event listeners to those HTML elements and be able to like perform some action. So we can see an example for that for you to actually understand it. Okay, so what I will do right here, I'll remove this one, and right here I want us to write a very simple JavaScript program or script to change the content of our heading. Okay, so what we will do, we will have a button, and we can give this button an ID, and I'll call it change hyphen title hyphen btn, and then we need to also have an ID for our heading, and I'll call this one our hyphen title. Okay, so the reason that we are using IDs here is so that we can be able to select those elements using JavaScript right here. Okay, so let's select our title, document dot get element by ID, and then I can use brackets, and I give our name, I provide the name for our ID right here, our hyphen title, and then we need to store this in what we call a constant, or we can do it on a variable. For now, let's use const, and we will say our title is equals to document.get element by ID, our title. Now, this is called DOM in JavaScript, document object model. We'll be learning more about it. So this document is some form of browser API that allows us to select the HTML elements, and we can be able to manipulate those particular HTML elements by using JavaScript. Okay, so what we are doing here, we are simply selecting our h2 using this ID, and we are saying document.get element by ID. We are giving the ID, and we are storing this selection on a constant. Now let's select our button. So we'll do a similar thing. So I can just start by const change title btn, and I'll set this to be equal to document dot get element by ID, and then I'll select our change hyphen title hyphen btn. So this is hyphen. So you can see the way I am naming this particular constant, and this is how we do it in JavaScript, and this is called camel casing. So if you have multiple words, you start with a small letter, and then for the second word, you start with a capital letter. For the third, you start with a capital letter. So we are now selecting our button using document.get element by ID, change title btn. Now we can be able to add what we call an event listener to this particular button. So right here, we can say change title btn dot add event listener, and then we use brackets like this, and then right here, what we will add is a click event. So whenever we click this button, we want to change the content of our heading, and then after this we will use a comma, and right here we will write what we call a callback function, and we'll be learning more about functions later on. So we can write what we call an arrow function like this. I will use brackets, and then right here we will write an arrow using equal sign and the greater sign like that. And this is why it's called an arrow function, because it have an arrow somewhere, and then I'll use some curly brackets. Okay, so we'll be learning this form of syntax later on. Okay, and right here we can be able to access our title and change its content. So right here you can say our title dot inner HTML, and we can change the content of JavaScript. And what we will say is JavaScript is awesome. So now this is called a string, where we are writing some text inside the quotes. Okay, so we'll be learning about strings later on. So right now I just want to give you examples early so that you can get used to it. Now we have actually completed our JavaScript program, and I'll save that file. Okay, let me tell you what we are doing. We are selecting this heading with this code, and then we are selecting this button with this code. And then what we are doing right here, we are adding what we call an event listener. So it will listen to some form of action so that it execute the code that is in here. So when we click the button, that is when this function, this arrow function, that is when it will run. And what it will do, it will change the content of our title here. So it will change that inner HTML content, and we will replace it with JavaScript is awesome. And since we are adding this at the end, just before closing the body tag, that means that our HTML code have been loaded, and we can be able to access these elements with JavaScript. Okay, so let's see how this will go. I'll open now the browser here, and we have our button, but our button don't have the content. So let's add the content. Let's say change title, like that. I will save, and it will reload, and now we have change title. Awesome. So now when I click change title, this JavaScript should change to JavaScript is awesome. So I'll click change title, and there we go. JavaScript is awesome. So actually you have written your first JavaScript program, and you are on your way of being a JavaScript developer, which is really cool. Now what I wanted to show you is, if I remove this, I will remove that and include it at the head. Now the issue that we will have right here is that we will get an error because we can't access our button. The reason why we can't access our button is because HTML has not yet loaded. We will try to run this JavaScript code before HTML is loaded, because this code will be written from top to bottom. So let's see. I'll open the browser, and you can see we have an error on the console. So this is why you can see the errors. Cannot read property of null. So we'll be learning about null later on. Reading add event listener. So if we try to change the title, it's not working because our HTML is not loaded, and we tried to learn JavaScript. Or rather, our JavaScript code was being executed before we loaded our HTML. So always make sure that you have your JavaScript just before closing the body tag right here if you want to write internal JavaScript. Now it's recommended to use an external file, especially if you have some code that is shared by multiple pages, or if you have a very long JavaScript program. Okay, so with external file, this is how we link to an external file. We use a script tag, and then we have an SLC attribute and the name of the file. So let's add this file right here. I'll say main.js, and from this file we can be able to write some JavaScript. So what I will do, I'll come to this one, I'll copy the content of our script right here, and so I will just like cut it, and then I'll come to main.js, and I need to paste it here, and then I will save. And I have an extension called prettier to auto format the code so that it's more readable. So for this file I will save, and I don't know why it was not auto formatted. Yeah, we missed something. We need to terminate this with a curly bracket. I will save now. So I missed a curly bracket and a closing bracket. Okay, let me show you what we missed. We didn't copy this one, so I'll cut that, and just after this one I'll include it here, and then I will save, and it will be auto formatted like that. And now I can remove these script tags. I will save that file. Okay, what do we have? We have JavaScript code on an external file. Like this code is not inside our HTML file. We are using a separate file and then linking to it using this script tag. Now the question is, will this code work? And the answer is no. Why? Because we will like download the content of this file and execute it before we even complete loading our HTML file. So when the browser reach at this point, it will first download the content of this particular file. So it will load the JavaScript and execute it even before it proceeds to load our HTML. And that means that we can't add an event listener to our button. And if we can't add the event listener, then we can't change the content of our heading. So again, you can take this file at the bottom here, okay, and that will work. So I will save. Now when we come back and when it refresh, let's change the title, and it works. And we have a way of working around this. So if you want to include this script tag at the top here, you can use an attribute called differ. So what differ will do is that it will tell the browser when you reach to this point, yes, continue on and load our JavaScript or download it, and then don't execute it. Okay, it will download the file, it will download the content and include it at this position, but it will not execute it until we complete loading our HTML elements. When the HTML elements loads, that is when now the JavaScript will be able to execute. And this is a workaround which I really like to use, using defer at the top right here. So I can save this file, and when I come now right here, this JavaScript code should still work well. Okay, so change title, and awesome, so it's working. So we have seen how we can add JavaScript into a HTML file, and how we can be able to execute that code on the browser. Now, before I end this video, I know it's already long enough. I need to tell you two things. The first one is you can't write code in here when you are already linking to an external file. The code that you write in here will be ignored, okay? So right here, if we say console.log and then hello, and we terminate with a semicolon, this code will be ignored. So we won't see anything on the console. So if I come back, let's refresh, you'll see that we don't have anything on the console. If I try to change, it's changing, but this one is not working, okay? So if you are linking to an external file like this, you should not write code in here. So if we remove this defer and src and save that file, now you'll see we have hello. That code is being executed. So if you want to have some code in an external file and some code in a script tag, you can use two script tags instead, okay? So I will return this to where it was. I will remove this console, and then you can use a separate script tag if you want. And now right here, you can say console.log of hello. I save that, and now when I come back, we should see hello, and still we should be able to execute our JavaScript program here. Really cool. Now, the other thing that I wanted to show you is that we can write some JavaScript code on the browser right here on the console. So right here, we can say console.log, and we can say hey. And when I enter, this code will be executed automatically. So I hit enter, and there we go, we have hey. And then we can write multiple lines. So this is a single line, and we know that when I hit enter, that will not create a new line. So to create a new line, you need to press shift and enter. And now we can write something else in here. Maybe we can say 4 plus 4, which is 8. Now when I hit enter, we should have hey, and we should have 8 on the console. I hit enter, hey, and the output here is 8. So we can perform some mathematical operations in JavaScript. And this marks the end of this episode. I know it was a bit long, but I feel that this was a good introduction to JavaScript, how we can execute the programs. And we saw an example right here, how we can work with JavaScript on a HTML file, which is really cool. Now, in the next episode, I will show you how you can use Node.js to execute a JavaScript program outside the browser. So this was inside a browser, Now I'll show you how we can execute a JavaScript program outside the browser. So that is it for this video. I hope it was helpful, and please remember to support my channel by subscribing.